And the record button is smashed. Welcome to Podcast Titles Are a Spook. I'm your host, James Weeks, and today I am joined by John Hudak, founder of Fakertarians. John, why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself for those who have no clue who you are?
Okay, so I'm John Hudak. As James said, I was a co-founder and I'm the current head admin of Fakertarians. We're a page that aims to try to stop infiltration into the libertarian movement from tankies or alt-righters or anything. Pretty much sums it up.
So you've been doing a lot of research lately into some of the various people. You used to be a member of the Mises Caucus.
Yes, I was. I was actually in leadership for a while.
But then you've noticed a kind of a trend towards less crypto, more outright members.
Exactly. So when I first got involved, I actually joined their Facebook group to look for Fakertarians because I thought okay, this is going to be like some far right thing. This is going to be awful. And I mean, some of them were in there, but a lot of them got kicked early on. And there were some people I liked in there too because I'm an ANCAP. I know we have our issues, but some of the people in the group I was good with. And I hung around for a while, eventually got brought into leadership. One of the things they had me do when I was in leadership was review membership requests to try to keep the alt-righters or Nazis or whatever you want to call them out. And generally, I was able to get who I wanted booted. They generally gave me a decent amount of responsibility with that. But I would say over maybe the few months before November of 2019, I started to notice that there was a huge influx of new members, and a lot of them were like really open alt-righters. It was the people saying stuff like Europe is for Europeans and citing like demographic crimes stats and stuff like that. And it actually kind of coincided with how a lot of those famous libertarian podcasters were recruiting for the caucus, like Dave Smith and Tom Woods. So in November, I decided to step down from leadership. It was a mixture of that, the fact that the caucus endorsed Maj Toure, who I just thought was not someone I wanted to be involved with, and some other factors. But then I think it was late January of this year, I got into an argument over some Dave Smith quotes from his episode interviewing the crying Nazi Christopher Cantwell, where he said that he sympathizes with the alt-right, and he said something about how trans people lie because Cantwell was talking about trans people lying about him, even though they probably weren't lying. But and I got into kind of an argument with Michael Heiss, the founder of the caucus, saying that I was saying, I really hope this caucus is still against the alt-right. And he was like, what do you mean you hope, or something like that? And he asked me to name one alt-righter who was in the group. So I named the guy, and I brought forward some evidence of the guy being alt-right. It was Europe is for Europeans, stuff like libertarians need to do more about race as it pertains to criminality and IQ and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of just kicking the guy, which is what normally I thought should have happened, he starts going, well, I don't know about the definition of alt-right. What's your definition of alt-right? And he was telling me the guy just has a different cultural preference. So that's about when I was just totally fed up and done with this place.
Yeah, so he was trying, Michael Heiser, the founder of the Mises Caucus, was trying to argue that people who want, a white ethno-state just have a different cultural preference, and so therefore they're okay? That's basically the...
That was essentially it. He was saying, well, he was allowing the guy to kind of give like an alternate definition of what Europe is for Europeans means. He was saying it means like self-determination or something like that. But I mean, I see the alt-righters say that kind of stuff all the time. The Europe is for Europeans, and you always know what it means.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not even a dog whistle anymore.
No. And then there was the stuff about the guy was saying about racial IQ and criminality. Like it was obvious to anyone who wasn't just like trying to not see it, that the guy was a straight up alt-righter. So I left the caucus, the guy, and then I made a post about the guy from Fakertarians, and Heiss showed up to defend the guy again. So he's totally doubling down, tripling down, getting mad at me for going at this guy, saying I'm acting in bad faith and stuff like that. A couple days later, I find some screenshots of that same guy just going on rants about Jews, and then he eventually got kicked. But it seems more like they care more about how things look than how the people actually are.
Right. They don't want people to know that they have these type of people in the caucus.
That's kind of how it started to seem to me. I mean, there's still some people in the caucus that I think have good intentions, but I don't know. Whoever's running that ship right now is, I think they're willfully overlooking some of this stuff.
Well, from what I noticed, as an outside observer, watching as the caucus grew and formed, I noticed a lot of it was in response to, Nick Sarwark, the current chairman of the Libertarian National Committee, asking Tom Woods to sign on to a letter that was condemning a hate group that Tom Woods himself formed back in the 90s, the League of the South, which is, one of the nation's largest hate groups. And Tom Woods basically told him to fuck off, that he wasn't signing on, condemning it, which signaled to a lot of people that he didn't condemn that group, which...
Yeah, no, I get you. I didn't join because of that originally. I was looking for a group that they build themselves as kind of making the Libertarian Party libertarian again and adhering to principles. And after the whole Bill Weld debacle, I was like, okay, yeah, principles are great. But I definitely think that was a factor for some people. And I personally was fine with signing the petition. Like I put my name on it.
Right, especially with Tom Woods being, like, having a bunch of libertarians sign on condemning, the Unite the Right rally is one thing, but when, we have one of their founders as someone who identifies as a libertarian, and then he's unwilling to condemn, and, he likes to give the excuse that, they were a different organization back then, blah, 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 which is completely false. I mean, the same guy who he founded it with is still their current president. It's not like it's different people, and while he was a member, and while he was working for them for about a decade, they made such calls as to call for reparations to be paid to former slave-owning families for their loss in property in when freeing of slaves. So, like, that was like the stuff they were talking about back when he was a member. Not very, not very innocent kind of stuff.
I mean, even if his views have changed, I don't see what the problem would be with condemning the old views. I don't know. He kind of shies away from that. I feel like that's kind of the thing where they want to try. A lot of these podcasters, like Dave Smith, want to try to kind of like appeal to the alt-right without coming out and saying it. So they don't want to condemn that kind of stuff because it decreases their podcast membership.
Well, I mean, that's the truth. I mean, being a libertarian podcaster doesn't make you very much money. I don't make shit doing this podcast. I have like just enough Patreon donations to pay for my website hosting, and that's about it. I do this shit because I enjoy doing it. But when because there's not an audience for it. There's not very many libertarians in the world.
Right.
You know what there are a lot of is a lot of fucking racist right-wingers.
Oh, yeah.
So, when you have a podcast audience that appeals to racist right-wingers, you'll probably get a lot more members, a lot more donations than you would otherwise, which is why I've noticed a lot. It's not just Dave Smith. It's not just Tom Woods. It's not just, I've noticed a lot of, the celebritarian type people drift that way. And it seems like it's for the money. It seems like it's because they want to make a living doing it. And they're not doing it out of a love for it. They're doing it out of, wanting to to get as many hashtag please donate monies as possible. So you do see a lot of them pander to, the right wing audience who will open up their checkbook and fund, a podcast that tells them about how race and IQ and doesn't condemn them for their racism. Stefan Molyneux, for example, is a great example of someone who probably, a decade ago was a more, ANCAP style.
Yeah, he was.
Libertarian.
I actually, when I was first becoming an ANCAP, I actually used to watch some of his videos. I didn't know about the whole weird family separation thing he has going on. But
the culty shit.
Yeah. I wasn't into that, but I used to watch some of his his videos against war and against the state and stuff. And he was so anti-voting that he wouldn't vote for Ron Paul, but then he totally backed Donald Trump, and he's acting like Trump's the savior.
That's the funniest part about it.
Oh, I know.
That's the funniest part about his journey. But when it was when Trayvon Martin was murdered, that's kind of when I noticed Stefan Molyneux going that way, because I remember there was a number. He did some shit, about how terrible single moms are and shit like that. But when he did his video that he did on Trayvon Martin, and he tried to excuse and justify killing Trayvon Martin because he had iced tea, the Arizona tea and Skittles, and he tried to say that meant that he was on drugs, so therefore it was okay. Because Arizona and Skittles are how you make lean, which is wrong. That's for starters, that's wrong. It's Sprite and a grape Jolly Rancher with fucking promethazine codeine. You mix that shit up, and that's how you make lean. It has nothing to do with fucking Skittles and Arizona iced tea. But he used this whole thing. Well, he was on this drug, so therefore, and anyone out there that's ever tried lean would know that even if he was on lean, he wouldn't have been able to fucking fight George Zimmerman at all, because they call it lean because all you can fucking do is lean on. It's like, you can't do the
same. He did the same thing with Eric Garner too. He kind of excused that death too, saying it was some weird convoluted argument about how Eric Garner was taking away from the other shops by selling loose cigarettes untaxed outside. It didn't make any sense.
Yeah. So it's shit like that makes you really see these people for who they are when they take the masks off and say what they're thinking quietly out loud. That it really 'cause there's a lot of them that, before those videos, you would have never thought anything of it. Oh, he's talking about the non-aggression principle. He's talking about blah, 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 But then, they take their mask off and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? It was surprising to a lot of people. And there's a lot of people who still listen to him to this day, even though, and now it's even worse with, Molyneux going on about race and IQ and crime statistics and
brown kids in elementary school.
Yeah.
Saying we were never asked. Yeah. And he had that whole thing about how I've spoken out against white nationalism, but I'm an empiricist. He said that after a visit to Poland where he had like a nice time in Poland.
Yeah, it's disgusting that we have these people, and that's who a lot, because these are the big names. These are the big names in the libertarian movement on the libertarian right. These are who, when people Google who are the big names, who are the people who are people putting out content, it's these people. It's Stefan Molyneux. To a lesser extent, it's Dave Smith or Tom Woods. It's Christopher Cantwell. These are the people who the general public gets associated with right libertarianism, and it's good to have people like you on the libertarian right that are taking a stand against these people. So thank you for that.
No problem. Happy to help out. I mean, I still see, people say like libertarian Augustus Invictus and stuff like that, and that just drives me crazy. Like I don't want to be associated with that guy or any of the others.
But what can what's some stuff that right libertarians can do and are doing to try and combat this and combat what the Mises Institutes do, or the Mises Caucus and the Mises Institute's doing, like Mises Institute with fucking what's his name, Gary North.
Gary North.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking into Gary North a lot more the other day because I'd always heard rumblings about him and I knew he was like really out there. But I was actually reading through some of his books and he's not shy about the fact that he wants like disobedient children and homosexuals and blasphemers to be like stoned to death. Like I don't know why anyone would want to associate with this guy.
Well, right. But it's something that the Mises Institute does. He's one of their fellows.
Yeah, he won some like the Murray and Rothbard Medal of Freedom Award. They gave him, I think it was in like the mid 2000s or something like that. And I mean, he's on the Ron Paul homeschool curriculum. Tom Woods calls him the master. I was actually tweeting at Tom Woods the other day for a comment on him and didn't get a response back.
Oh, he didn't want to talk about Gary North?
No, neither did Dave Smith or the Mises Institute.
Well, Ron Paul knows all this stuff.
Yeah, like I don't know if people are just overlooking it or what. Like I don't know how you can overlook a guy who wants to murder innocent people. It's just so far out of libertarian ideology. It's like the exact opposite of what libertarians are supposed to be for.
But these are the big names that people see.
Oh yeah.
They think of Ron Paul. When people think of a right libertarian, Ron Paul is, to the general public, the first name that pops into their head. But here he is with his homeschool curriculum, having, Gary North, the guy who wants to stone, homosexuals to death, as the guy writing his curriculum.
Yeah, and like I appreciate Ron Paul for bringing me into the movement and kind of because I was a neoconservative before I found Ron Paul in 2008 or 2009 or so, and I appreciate the work he did to try to bring libertarianism into the forefront. But even with that said, like I can't excuse the Gary North thing. I feel like there's a whole issue with hero worship in the libertarian movement where if they like one guy for anything, they'll just try to excuse away every shitty thing he's ever done.
Yeah, like the newsletters.
Yeah. There was actually, speaking of the Mises Caucus and the newsletters, so there was this one guy I found on Twitter. He's a Mises Caucus member. I found him defending the content of the Ron Paul newsletters, along with a bunch of other stuff, like making all these Pinochet references and crazy stuff like that. And I brought it to the attention of the caucus. They ended up kicking him out. Then a week later or so, I found out that he's been let back in. They just said he has to tone things down and he'll be allowed to stay.
Yeah, because it's all about that they don't want them exposing their power level. It's not about whether or not they're a racist, fascist piece of shit. It's about whether or not that they're letting people know that they're a racist, fascist piece of shit.
Yeah, that's why I say it seems like it's more about whether they're making them look bad or not than whether they have these views in secret.
Well, that's why I don't really understand why right libertarians place, the Rothbard Mises stuff in such high regard instead of someone like, a David Friedman, who isn't,
Oh yeah, I mean, I like a lot of Rothbard's. Being an anarcho-capitalist, I like a lot of Rothbard's earlier stuff, but I'm not going to make any. And even some of that, I have disagreements with him there too. But I'm not going to make any excuses for the Paleo period and the David Duke stuff and the Unleash the Police.
Well, the first person Rothbard ever supported was Strom Thurmond.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying I'm not going to make it. I still have disagreements with his earlier stuff too, but I mean, I appreciate some of the theory.
Well, the only thing good I see out of Rothbard's earlier stuff is that he kind of influenced Konkin in a way, where Konkin became more Rothbardian than Rothbard. He
I could
took
see
he
that.
took the good things of Rothbard and made it much better and more consistently applied, and not a bunch of racist bullshit.
Well, I feel like with Rothbard's paleo period, I feel like some of those podcasters are trying to revive that right now, like the alliance with the alt writers or the groypers or whatever they call themselves now. Like Dave Smith, when he had Nick Fuentes on, was actually talking about that, and Smith was also excusing Fuentes' Holocaust denial, saying like, "Oh, well, it's not that bad to question the numbers," like not knowing that, or I'm sure Dave Smith knows how bad Fuentes is, but I feel like he's trying to make excuses for him.
And but Dave Smith is just a comedian, right? So no,
It's just a joke.
it's just a
You just
joke.
gotta put comic at the front of your name.
Yeah,
We actually have comic fakertarians on Twitter right now.
perfect. But for those who are listening who may not know, who is Nick Fuentes?
Um, he first rose to prominence when he attended the Unite the Right rally, and then he got a lot of shit for that, and he had to leave the college he was at. I believe it was Boston University. Um, and then he's gotten a big following with these people called the Groypers. They have all those like frog profile pictures and shit, and they're kind of a more thinly veiled white nationalist than someone like Spencer. Like it's really obvious they're white nationalists. Like they won't even really deny it. But instead of coming out saying like we need an ethno state, they'll just kind of like it's kind of like the thing Jared Taylor does where he says he's a white advocate instead of a white nationalist, but you can tell anyway. Um, and Fuentes made this video about like how hard it is to bake 6 million cookies or something like that. It was some Holocaust denial video that was the one that Smith was making excuses for. And then he had Fuentes says that segregation wasn't that bad. He'll be like, "Oh, you had to drink out of different water fountains, big deal." And there's actually a video of him too saying that rape isn't that bad because he's saying like, "Oh, someone's having sex with you. Oh no." Or something. The guy's he's just a disgusting human being all around.
Mm-hmm.
And Smith was talking about like how he's better than like the establishment right and stuff like that. And Smith has had him on twice over the past like 5 months or so. And the last time, honestly, it was just they had some disagreements, but it really just seemed like a love fest.
Mm. So this is the guy who one of the Mises Caucus top recruiter loves to,
Smith, yeah.
yeah. And Dave Smith, he's a he's a comedian allegedly, that recruits for the Mises Caucus, and somehow the funny thing is people always want to tell me how big Dave Smith is, and how much of a following he has and all this kind of. I didn't hear about him until the Mises Caucus started telling me about how huge this guy was.
Even when I was in Mises Caucus leadership, I barely had any idea who he was. I just knew there was a guy named Dave Smith who was supposedly a comedian and had a podcast. Like I don't think he's that huge. I mean, maybe he's gaining a little bit more prominence now. Like I didn't even understand how bad he was until the whole controversy where I actually went on his show to argue with him about this, where he went on Molyneux's show and called him the great Stefan Molyneux. And then I actually found the year before he had been on to discuss immigration with Molyneux, and they were laughing about people being called racists.
So he was making fun of people wanting to not have racist immigration policies.
Well, he was making fun of people calling people like Molyneux racist.
I mean, Molyneux is clearly a racist.
Oh, I know. It's obvious. Molyneux was. I actually caught Molyneux tweeting the other day. Like he was doing his normal like. It's obvious he's appealing to white nationalist thing, but he maintains the plausible deniability. He tweeted something like, "Are any synagogues getting shut down? I haven't seen any of those."
Oh, jeez. Here's the thing with they always want to. white nationalists, white supremacists, they always want to change what they're being called. Throughout my time of being, politically aware to this kind of shit, I've seen them, like, it used to be white nationalist was the thing that they were calling themselves to try and hide that they were white supremacists. And then people were like, yeah, we know what white nationalist means. And they started trying to call themselves alt-right or, ethno-nationalist or even civic nationalist to try and downplay the race aspect of it and try and be like, oh, it's nationality,
There's some.
Yeah,
I'll go on.
Yeah, it's they always want to call themselves something else. They want to hide because they know how unpopular these ideas really are when they're shown at their full light. When, they actually get into how, racist they are. That's why they always want to. They're not racist. They're race realists.
White
advocates or whatever the hell they're calling themselves. And by the time, a year from now, when people are going back and listening to this podcast, they'll be calling themselves something entirely different. And all the names we just mentioned that they call themselves, they probably won't even be using anymore. They'll be using some weird shit. They'll be calling
Fuentes uses America first.
Yeah,
That's his whole thing right
America first. It's like, what does he mean by America?
I mean, it's pretty clear what he means.
Yeah.
If you watch, there was actually a talk he had about that with Richard Spencer, where he was basically like, well, he was actually saying basically like civic nationalism is basically white nationalism if you look at the demographics of America. Like it's obvious what he's doing.
Right. Well, that's what it is. The idea that these people are not a bunch of fucking boneheads is ridiculous. That's that's all it is. Is they're trying to. It's the same reason why Richard Spencer started calling himself alt-right.
Yep.
It's the same reason why they do this, and they want to hide. You have a lot of times where you're trying to argue with people and say, like, look at what this guy's saying. This guy's clearly a racist. And they're like, well, he doesn't say he's a racist. Racists always tell you they're a racist. Or he's definitely
I get that so much.
He's fascist. So they're proud to be fascist. They tell you that's such a small minority of racists and fascists that actually are outright with it. They act in crypto. I mean, it's the same thing with if you read the history of the Nazi Party. They started calling themselves socialists to try and attract working class people because that was popular, even though they weren't socialists. And, the minute they seized any power, they slaughtered union leaders. They slaughtered fucking, leftists of any type and all this kind of shit. It's what they always do. It's what fascists have always done. They don't come out and tell you what they're trying to do.
Oh, yeah.
Because if they did, people would be like, fuck you, get out of here.
It's like I read an article by Jared Taylor, another one of those, the white advocate guy, the other day. And he had this whole thing about how the whole article was basically support him giving reasons to support laws against race mixing. And then at the end, he said something like, well, but I'm actually against those laws because I don't want government to get into private people's lives or something like that. But it was so obvious that he supports them. Mm-hmm. But he can't just come out and say, like, government should make laws against race mixing. But the entire article was just reasons why government should make laws against race mixing.
I don't know if you watched, speaking of these, people who call themselves libertarians, Ben Shapiro. He recently did a video where he went through and took the political compass test, where he was like, well, I'm obviously a right libertarian, and went in and took the test. And it was so funny watching him go and take, the different answers and all that, because there were so many, like, easy ones that he just, like, struggled on and had to explain away and, like, all this kind of stuff. And even with him obviously fudging some of his answers based on stuff he said publicly, to try and make it seem like he was more of a free market libertarian, right libertarian, to make it seem like he was more, because he contradicted public statements he's made in many of the
Mm.
answers. So he was bullshitting, and even with doing that, even with trying to metagame the political compass test, he still like miserably failed and was like right on the middle line between authoritarian and libertarian. Even with him
Wow.
metagaming it so obviously,
That
trying.
reminds me of I don't know if you know who Chris John Cox is. He used to write for Liberty Hangout. He was the guy who did their Cantwell interview where Cantwell was like going on about how the Jews run everything and they're terrible, and he was just going right, right. And then he went on to produce shows for Richard Spencer and David Duke eventually. But I remember years ago, he took a like one of those kind of political compass tests. It wasn't the political compass, it was a different one. And he got really angry that he got like neoconservative instead of libertarian.
I don't know what it is about a lot of these these fascist fucks that they want to act like they're a libertarian when they're so clearly authoritarian.
Honestly, I think it's Hoppe. I think I think Hans Hermann Hoppe is the connecting line there.
He's the one that's doing it. Why
I
why
think
him
that's
in particular over late Rothbard or Lou Rockwell or one of those other types?
I mean, you could cite them too, but Hoppe's immigration argument is the one people always cite. It basically allows people who call themselves libertarians to justify force against immigrants with the whole net taxpayers argument. Do you know that one?
Yeah, I've
Where
seen
the
that.
net taxpayers own the country, so you can use violence to keep the immigrants out. And Hoppe also gets into a lot of the neo-reactionary type stuff. I've actually been going through. Hoppe runs a I don't know if you call it a think tank or what, but it's called the Property and Freedom Society.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been looking through some of the attendees and speakers over the years, and it's like a who's who of like alt-righters and white nationalists. It's got a speech from Richard Spencer in 2010 about the alternative right. It's got um Jared Taylor giving a speech in 2013 on race relations, where he talks about like he gives all these reasons why slavery wasn't that bad and how slaves loved their masters and cried when they left and stuff like that.
Oh, jeez.
This at the same one, I think there was Richard Lynn giving a talk like "Why are Jews so smart?" Um, it, he just didn't he's just really in with these people.
Okay, so he's the one that's really bridging the gap and and he's the one that's mainly responsible for today's infiltration by these alt-righters.
I would say so, and the people a lot of the people he ends up bringing in actually like Hoppe. Like, don't get me wrong, Hoppe's got a lot of terrible stuff, but they like take it further than he does. Like the helicopter shit, and like that's all Hoppe fans.
Mm-hmm. But those, it's Ron Paul. That's where the whole paleo movement really started, though, was with the Ron Paul 88 campaign in the Libertarian Party. And that's where, Rothbard and all that, when they coined, the paleo libertarian as the term they wanted to identify, was an offshoot of that. When the radicals and the anarchists in the party were backing Russell Means, that was where, the radical energy was with Russell Means. The pure libertarian energy was with Russell Means. It was never with Ron Paul. Ron Paul was the paleo candidate. He was, his campaign in '88 was like where the origin of the term paleo libertarian even comes from. So like, and then you have the newsletters. You have it's just that's.
Oh yeah, I think the paleo strategy still kind of haunts us today, because it's got the whole that was when Rothbard changed his immigration policy. I know Rockwell went way further right at that point, and it's kind of what Hoppe came out of,
Right.
because Hoppe was Rothbard's understudy during that like I think it was late 80s, early 90s time period.
Right. And if you remember from Ron Paul's campaign in '08 and 2012, his plan was to bring the troops home and do what with them? What he said? Put them on the border.
Yeah, I mean, I can't excuse that.
That, which I mean, of course, to a neocon at the time, you wouldn't, you probably wouldn't have thought anything of, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds
Oh,
like a
yeah.
good idea. Let's put the troops on the border. You know?
I feel like I became an ANCAP in like 2011 or so, and I think around that time, Borders was like the last thing to go for me.
Yeah, that was your big holdout was borders.
Well, I wouldn't call it big. It was a pretty quick change, like over a year or two, but I didn't really get it on Borders. I was like, "Oh, we're a country, we can protect our borders." And then it kind of clicked for me that like, "Oh, I'm supposed to oppose like big government and government stopping people from doing things, and why should I be opposing someone crossing a line in the desert?"
Oh, don't feel bad about that. I'm gonna let everyone know a little secret that everyone's gonna cancel me over. Is back in my first campaign for state representative, I actually for a brief time, and like it's so stupid to run on a platform that you haven't fully fledged out. But I actually put in some of my early campaign literature before, thankfully, a member of my county party explained it to me, and I immediately deleted that and destroyed all remaining campaign literature that said it. But I actually had on my platform support for right to work laws.
Oh.
Yeah. So don't feel bad about
No, I get you.
yeah, don't feel bad about having a holdout on immigration, but I hadn't fully fledged out. I put that on there because, I was trying to go with what a bunch in the party were trying to say, and they were supporting that. And then once it was explained to me that, hey, wait a minute, these laws are state interference with negotiation on contract.
Yep.
And what really needs to happen is to abolish the Wagner Act, which prevents wildcat strikes, and it prevents all sorts of different stuff, and that people have the right to form a union, and all this kind of stuff, and they have the right to negotiate their contract, and the government shouldn't tell them how to negotiate.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh shit, I need to destroy all this.
I
But
feel like that
now
was one of the
everyone
later
knows.
ones
Now
for me,
it's
too.
it's so many years behind me. Now I don't mind telling people that I used to be a fucking idiot.
That was one of the later ones for me too, because I felt like
Can you
people who
imagine
said
though, one of the founders of the Libertarian Socialist Caucus, what supported right to work laws?
I'll have to post that on Fakertarians.
Oh man, yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What you were saying?
I was gonna say that was one of the later ones for me too, because I didn't really figure out what it entailed. It was like I just knew that people who said they supported a free market were in favor of those, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's. I didn't look into it that much. I feel like.
Right. That's a big part of the problem is that these people like Ron Paul, who was the one who I was listening to at the time, was saying, hey, these are good. It was his Campaign for Liberty organization that was pushing right to work. It was, and at the time I was trying to get, Campaign for Liberty's support, which was a stupid idea. That was the stupid campaign, but it was great. I ended that That campaign actually radicalized me quite a bit. Like,
What year was that?
that was, what, 2000. When was the first time I ran for office? Was that 2012? I think it was 2012. It was, yeah. Yeah, it was 2012. It was the same year Gary Johnson was kept off the ballot. It was
Oh
during,
yeah.
and but by the end of that campaign, I ended that campaign with on election day holding a "Don't Vote" protest, where I went to the polls with a sign that said, "Don't vote," and introduced myself as, "Hey, I'm James. I'm running for state representative. Don't vote." And it was great. I'm actually surprised I didn't get arrested for doing that. But there was there was one guy who pulled up and he rolled his window down. He saw my, "Don't vote" sign. He's like, "Hey, why? What do you mean? Why shouldn't we vote? And I told him, oh, it only encourages the bastards. And he pulled in and he sat in his car. It was like 5 minutes later. I watched him. He was sitting in his car the whole time. He never went in. And then he was pulling out and he rolled his window down. He's like, you know what? You're right. Fuck him. And he just drove off. And like,
That's great.
That was the highlight of my entire political career is that one moment. That was the best moment I ever had in all of my politics was that one guy told me, you know what, fuck him, I'm not voting.
That's great.
But I started that campaign. I was heavily pandering to the right libertarian audience. I was trying to run a more moderate campaign, even though I was an anarchist.
Mm.
I ran a really I guess you could call it a pragmatic campaign. But it was bad, and it was very embarrassing that was my first run, and then my second run was for Congress, and I completely radicalized that, and I ran on, free all prisoners, arrest all cops, and I ran for sheriff and added burn down the jail to free all prisoners, arrest all cops. But I really wish I could take that beginning part of my first campaign back. But
I mean, I feel like a lot of people have stories like that.
Yeah. But so basically, what I'm getting at is, don't feel bad about being a holdout on immigration.
I feel like I've made up for it since then.
Good, because we do have a lot of people, and immigration's a big one that really separates, a libertarian from a fakertarian. It makes it so easy to tell. Is talk about immigration and see who says, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, when I was on Dave Smith's show, I was arguing immigration with him, and I one of the things he said, I was just like dumbfounded, because he told me like a wall isn't that bad. I just kind of like looked at him like I didn't even know what to say. And this guy's supposed to be a libertarian, and he's fine with like, well, he just thought it was like a better solution or something like that. But I mean, it's that whole Hoppian strand, because that's where he gets the immigration argument from. He actually used to be an open borders guy.
He used to be open borders and went closed borders?
Yeah, I think maybe 2016 or so. I found tweets from him like totally open borders. I think it was the Hoppe argument, or at least, or maybe he wanted, being more cynical, maybe he wanted to pander to those people, but that's what he cites, I'm pretty sure.
I wonder how much of it is honest, belief in wanting, a wall and supporting, Trump style immigration, and how much of it is just pandering to that audience, though. Like that's what I wonder. And what's worse? That's the big question. What would be worse, if he honestly held those beliefs, or if he's just pretending to pander?
Yeah, if he knows they're wrong and he's advocating. I feel like it's close, but I feel like if he knows they're wrong and he's advocating for them and really spreading it around and trying to inject it into the liberty movement, I feel like that's worse.
Right, because it gives the wrong impression.
Because you're doing something wrong, too. Mm-hmm. It's not like you actually sincerely believe in it.
Right. When you figure out you're doing something wrong, you destroy all literature to the otherwise, and change the platform. It's okay to be wrong. It's not okay to know you're wrong and continue being wrong.
It seems like so many libertarians went that way right around the rise of Trump. I remember I wrote an article about that. That was like one of the first ones I ever wrote that people actually read. It was called Trump Libertarians, and it was about Justin Maldo of Liberty Hangout. It was about coincidentally Christopher Cantwell, and about Molyneux, and about how they all kind of shifted right around the time that Trump started to get popular.
Well, they didn't because their opposition to government never was, actual opposition to government. It was opposition to Obama government. They didn't like Obama being in charge. That's what it was. You see that.
I'm sure
you see a lot of people.
You see that.
You see a lot of people that are they just don't like Obama. As soon as Trump got into power, a lot of right libertarians flocked right over to Trump and started goose stepping with Trump.
Rand Paul.
Yeah, Rand Paul, for example, Thomas Massey.
Yep.
Not so much Justin Amash. Justin Amash ended up, telling him to fuck off, but Justin Amash's and Trump's immigration stuff is not that far off.
Oh, I know. That's kind of scary. I'm hoping because who knows if he's going to be running now. There's been some stuff today that I saw.
Yeah, there's been some stuff today about people wanting Justin Amash to run. And Justin Amash actually as a write-in came in second to the Michigan straw poll as a write-in. And I was like, I wrote in not Justin Amash. But that wasn't because it was ranked choice, so that wasn't part of that. Yeah. That didn't make it through to anything, so that wasn't in the results. But here's the big thing though is with them wanting to claim Jacob Hornberger is Ron Paul 2.0. What does that tell us though?
I don't know. I mean, what's weird to me is that the the closed border people like Dave Smith are getting behind Hornberger, because I know he's got some things I disagree with in his platform for sure, like the abortion thing and all that. But
right.
Hornberger's actually like very open borders. I mean, I don't know if some of these people just don't know that just because they hear Tom Woods is promoting him and they're like, oh, Tom Woods says it, I got to do it because the whole hero worship thing or what. Because I know he has a lot of like the closed border supporters. I mean, some of them want him to change his position or moderate it a little bit.
Well, the real telling thing to me with that is, his abortion stuff. I think it's a compromise. They're okay with the open borders as long as Jacob Hornberger wants the states to be able to ban abortion.
You could be right. I mean, one of the reasons I left LPMC, the Mises Caucus leadership originally, was because Heiss was going around talking about the idea of getting rid of the LP immigration and abortion planks. And I was like, no, I'm not interested in that. Like, we don't have the same values.
So he's trying to delete both the abortion and immigration plank in order.
At least that's what he was saying at the time.
Oh wow. Oh, both of those need to be strengthened.
Oh, I agree.
Both of those, we need to be explicitly not just pro-choice. We need to be pro-abortion. But we definitely need to strengthen those planks and really, because I think that'll help a lot. One big victory that was won, and this is probably something, I don't know if you can give some insight into this, but in the previous convention, the exception that was in the immigration plank was removed. So it strengthened the immigration plank. And is there talk about like that was a bad move within the Mises Caucus group that you've noticed?
I haven't specifically seen that because I feel like a lot of these people are really new. Like a lot of them were really, especially some of the more problematic ones, a lot of them were like just brought in by Dave Smith and Tom Woods and that huge recruitment drive going on. But I mean, I feel like there's something in the immigration plank still that seems kind of weak, right? I'm kind of forgetting some of the wording, but I feel like there's something that I've seen people use to justify immigration restrictions still.
Well, yeah, it's the word reasonably.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is.
But they removed the thing about national security.
Yeah.
Which strengthened the plank, but definitely that the word where it says can be shall not be unreasonably constrained or whatever the wording is, that word unreasonably needs to go away entirely. And then the abortion plank just needs to fucking take a stand. The abortion plank is so fucking weak and so pandery, and that's something that you can't be a libertarian and want the state to ban abortion.
Yeah,
like period.
I'm with you.
There's no discussion on whether or not that is a libertarian, either left or right libertarian, just for the fact that the size and scope of a government required to enforce an abortion ban is so huge
Oh,
that
yeah.
even with our current size of government, which is fucking huge, still doesn't even have the power. And that's what it is. It's about, the right to privacy. You'd have to violate the right to privacy in order to enforce such a prohibition on abortion. You would have to completely abolish doctor-patient confidentiality in order to enforce it. You would have to force doctors to testify. And not only that, what are you going to do? You're going to kill doctors? Like, you're going to put doctors to death?
That's
Like,
what Liberty Hangout wants.
Are you going to imprison doctors for life? Like,
Liberty Hangout wants to imprison women for it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. The size of government required to do something like that is fucking huge.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, even an argument where, we're moving in the same direction with these people. No, the fuck we're not. That one issue alone makes it a big no, the fuck we're not. Stop.
Yeah.
It's funny how there's one thing that can really increase the size and scope of government, and that is one, which it's a massive civil liberties issue.
And immigration. I mean, that's huge too. Both issues we're talking about right now.
Right. And immigration regulation should not be anything to do with the federal government to begin with. To make an appeal to the Constitution, so where's the constitutionalists? Where does it, isn't the government supposed to be a government of enumerated powers? Where's that enumerated power? Where's the one that says they can regulate immigration? There's one that says that they can, institute uniform nationalization procedures, but nationalization and immigration are two different things. Mm-hmm. Immigration is just someone coming in. Nationalization is the process of them becoming a citizen. So sure, the federal government should, according to the Constitution, have a say in the procedure to become a citizen of the United States. But it doesn't say anything about regulating immigration. And it wasn't until, the Anarchist Exclusion Act and the Chinese Exclusion Act where they started even getting into regulating immigration in any way, shape, or form. The regulation of immigration in the United States is a rather new thing. It didn't start but for the past, little over 100 years now.
Yep.
It's not like something we've always done.
The courts just make stuff up as they go along, basically.
Well, that's the big fucking problem with the Constitution is, the Supreme Court is the final arbiter on, what is and isn't constitutional. They're your last stop. Whatever they fucking say goes, which is why nothing the government does is unconstitutional, because there's nothing that the government does that the Supreme Court said, hey, fuck you, don't do that. And they continue to do that. They stop doing it when the Supreme Court says that, or they continue when the Supreme Court says, no, that's fine, that's cool.
I'm a law student, and recently I just read the case in Michigan about where the Supreme Court said DUI checkpoints are okay, and the whole thing is basically like them saying, well, it violates the Constitution, but that's okay because the government has an interest in it. That's what so many cases are like.
Well, you have the with the federal Constitution, you have the power to regulate commerce. Everything's fucking commerce.
Yep. They use the commerce clause and the necessary and proper clause to just do whatever they want.
Yeah, they can do whatever the fuck they want. Just off those two clauses. They can justify just about everything. So basically fuck the Constitution.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing is, but it's just funny to see the people that call themselves constitutionalists though and be like, we should return to the Constitution, argue for immigration control, and that always fucking boggles my mind. Like Ron Paul up there with his let's put the troops on the border shit. Where's the enumerated power to say put the troops on the fucking border?
I don't see it.
Where's the enumerated power to even have a standing army? It says that you're supposed to just raise one. You have the power to raise one. It doesn't say to make a permanent standing army. But oh no, gotta have that standing army.
I'm with Spooner on the Constitution.
Yeah. Spooner was a great socialist.
I like him, even being an NCAP.
Yeah, you should read more socialist anarchists. I mean, just read the individualists. You don't have to go full Kropotkin,
No,
but
no, I get you.
I really would encourage you to read more like Benjamin Tucker or Voltairine de Cleyre, who I have tattooed on my leg. Everyone saw that in 2016. But I would encourage you to reach out and try and branch out and read a lot of other don't just read the ANCAP stuff, because that's
No, I
that's where
get
you
that.
get that's where you get to become like a Dave Smith.
I'm not there, I can tell you that.
Well, I'm glad. A lot of ANCAPs, a lot of people who call themselves ANCAPs. I won't. A lot of ANCAPs, people who call themselves ANCAPs, they turn out to be a lot of like Nazi apologists, and I'm glad that you're standing up to those people and trying to do something about them coming in and fucking up things and trying to tie libertarianism to obviously authoritarian shit. I'm glad that you're taking a stand against that kind of stuff. But I'd really encourage you to try and branch out. Try
Yeah,
try
I
and
have no problem with reading other stuff. I mean,
yeah.
I have to read like for fakertarians, I end up reading a bunch of alt-right shit.
Yeah, you gotta read some left libertarian stuff. I'm telling you, you want to fill your mind with that right libertarian or that right authoritarian bullshit.
Yeah, I'm glad I haven't started like I'm glad they haven't gotten to me.
Well, that's a good thing. That says a lot about your character, that you're able to you're diving in, doing things that I would not want to do. I would not want to keep an eye on these people like you are. They are just awful. Even
I
just
got,
like the little bit of research that I've done on them, it drives me crazy.
you know
Seeing,
how many Chase Rachel's articles I've had to read?
oh God, that's just awful. That's just awful. I wouldn't want to wish that on my worst enemy, is to read a bunch of Chase Rachel's. I remember, you know, I read one of his books. Well, part of it.
Spontaneous order.
Yeah, I read part of that. I read part of that book. I got to the point where he started arguing that cartels are good for the consumer. And I was like, who the fuck?
I,
I
I've
put,
never read it, but I heard it was basically just a regurgitation of a mix of Rothbard and Hoppe.
yeah, that's pretty much kind of what it was. But, I put that book down and never touched it since.
Don't
And
check out the next one, the one that
oh
has the. Oh,
yeah,
speaking of Hoppe,
I got to the cover on that one. That was
he makes well, if you open the cover, Hoppe actually makes a cameo. I don't know if you know the whole story behind that. The
yeah, but let's let the listeners know. Go ahead and tell us the story.
Okay, so Chase Rachel's this guy who used to be kind of like a run of the mill ANCAP. He started to go down the alt right route. He started a website called Radical Capitalist that had a lot of white nationalist, I mean, pretty open white nationalist stuff. It was like he had one of the first articles said that black people were proto humans. There was like the benefits of white nationalism or something like that was another article. So this guy, maybe like 6 months or so after he started the site, he's working on a book called White, Right, and Libertarian. And he emails Hans Hermann Hoppe to write the foreword for it. And Hans Hermann Hoppe is like, "Oh yeah, sure. I like your radical capitalist website." Um, so Hoppe writes it, emails it over to Chase Rachel's. Everything seems good. Then Hoppe sees that the cover of the book had it was four, I think it was four people being hung from helicopters, and one was like supposed to represent Islam, one was supposed to represent feminism. I forget what the other two were. Um, and then Hoppe bailed on it, supposedly because of the cover. There were rumors that the Mises Institute put pressure on him to like not have them be associated with that. Um, And then Chase Rachel's tried to change the cover and get Hoppe back on board.
Mm-hmm.
And Hoppe was still saying no. But then Chase decided to go forward with Hoppe in the forward anyway. And at this time though, Hoppe had already seen the name of the book. He had been sent a transcript of the book. He said that he saw Rachel's website. So I mean, I feel like he knew what it was about. And like a little while after he said that he was going to pull the forward, Hoppe published a modified version of the foreword on LouRockwell.com,
Mm-hmm.
and even in that modified version, he was talking about like people who are helping to take libertarianism back from the left or something like that. And he mentioned like Molyneux, he mentioned Woods, and he also mentioned Chase Rachels with his Radical Capitalist website. So even after this, he's still giving an endorsement to this website.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, Rachels ended up going forward with publishing the foreword as part of the book anyway. And as far as I know, there wasn't any legal action or anything on that. But it's just another example of Hoppe's associations with these types of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Chase Rachel's. I got into it on Facebook with him a number of times, and his wife.
Yeah.
You know, it was funny. I told him he was trash, and told him his book was trash, and his wife comes in and tries to be like, "Oh, well, you just didn't read it." And I was like, "Well, I tried to read it. It was so trash I couldn't get past the part where he claimed that cartels are good for the now how the fuck are cartels good for the
I couldn't tell you.
Like, that's like, come on.
A few months after that, after White Right and Libertarian came out, though, he published an article called "Fascism is a Step Toward Liberty."
Yeah.
And he had some Hitler apologism in there. I don't know if it was in that article or just in some Facebook comments he had where he was like saying that the Jews were like causing problems in Germany and that Hitler tried to negotiate a peaceful solution to send them to Madagascar and stuff like that. Like, the dude's out of his mind.
Which doesn't really make sense because, like, their god, Ludwig von Mises, although he was, a card-carrying fascist and member of the Fatherland Front Party in Austria and, top and most trusted economic advisor to Engelbert Dollfuss, and also a member of a Austro-fascist social club, which I won't even try to pronounce the name of it, but the Austro-fascists and Nazis, they didn't get along. The Austro-fascists and Nazis, they hated each other. In fact, it was the Nazis that came in and, ended up assassinating Engelbert Dollfuss, and the Italian fascists came in and backed up the Austro-fascists, and actually, for a while, the Italian fascists occupied parts of Austria to try and prevent the Nazis from coming in and prevent the Nazis from taking power away from the Austro-fascists for a while. Hitler and Mussolini were not always on good terms. It was Mussolini and Dollfuss who were the buddies hanging out with Mises. And the Nazis didn't get along with them because the Austro-fascists, they were a Catholic fascism. They were a very like Christian religion fascism. That was what their whole Austro-fascist shit was about, and that's where Mises was the top economic advisor for him. He was Dollfuss's most trusted advisor. And during this time, he's writing, in Mises' book Liberalism, he says that fascism, basically the gist of it is that fascism, albeit not perfect, is a temporary solution to fight back against socialism, which is what fascism was.
Right.
That's just a statement of fact. That's always been the purpose of fascism. That was always what fascists were about. Fascists weren't like permanent fascists. It wasn't like you were it was that you were trying to combat the rise of socialism threatening, bourgeois society. So it was a makeshift to try and combat that, to try and win support away and tie it to, it's not class doesn't divide us, it's nationality that divides us instead, and and all that kind of, that's what fascism always was an emergency makeshift temporary evil to combat the evil of socialism. That was what its point, and that was what Mises. But it always makes me funny to see like these people who loved Mises, support Hitler, because that was one thing, is that Hitler and the Austro-fascists, with like Mises and Dollfuss, did not get along with the Nazis at all. So the Hitler apology, where the fuck do those even come from?
I don't know.
Like,
I feel like it's an overlap with the alt-right stuff, because there's so many alt-right people that just hate Jews and all of that. So I've seen a lot of Holocaust deniers in the alt-right, but then I've also seen, it's like the Holocaust denier who says it didn't happen but they wish it did. I've seen that out of
yeah, I've seen those. It didn't happen, but it should have, and it should have been
Yeah.
worse and shit. Yeah.
And there's that one guy who he was in the Fakertarians discussion group for a while, Jimmy Wood. He was actually, I don't know if he's still running right now or if he ran last year for state representative in Oklahoma, but he went on this whole, he's one of the Hoppa guys. And he went on this whole thing about how the Jews declared war on Germany, so so Hitler was fighting back. And the thing he cites is like this 1933 tabloid article about that says like Judea declares war, and it's just like a Jewish boycott of German goods because they're like abusing Jewish people.
Yeah.
So that's war.
Yeah, I've seen that argument before, where they tried to twist a boycott into justification to do that. Like, oh no, a boycott.
They're not buying their stuff.
They're not buying this. You got to make them buy it. That's something too with like the you see kind of that kind of stuff with people wanting to the buy American, American kind of stuff.
Yeah, the America First crowds into that.
Yeah, it's very, very much a parallel that I've noticed between the America First people and the people who would say that was a great evil.
Yeah.
But somehow, placing economic sanctions on, all sorts of different countries. What are we going to spend the next 15 minutes naming a list of places that the U.S. put economic sanctions? But somehow that's fine. That's fine. Placing a trade embargo on Cuba and blocking them off from the rest of the world for fucking what, 70 years now about.
Yeah,
that's fine. That's not declaring war.
Didn't Trump reinstitute something? I think they kind of rolled some things back, and then Trump got back into it.
Yeah, they're kind. It seems like they're reversing the course. The one good thing Obama did, is ending that embargo partially. The one good thing he did is kind of roll that back, and Trump has been kind of trying to go in the opposite direction of that.
It's just 5D chess.
Yeah, it is. He's just playing 5G chess. And speaking of Trump playing 5G chess, how well did he play the fucking neoliberal Democrats this election cycle with trying to get them to put up Joe Biden? Like,
yeah, that's a mess.
Like, I seriously think that Trump, like, this. I guess this might be a conspiracy theory, whatever. But I really think that Trump's whole shit with trying to be like Joe Biden, was to try and elevate Joe Biden and do the same kind of thing that Hillary did with Trump in 2016, and elevate a candidate that she thought she could beat, even though, it didn't play out that way for her. 'Cause I mean, for fuck's sake, Hillary Clinton's like the goddamn devil. But
yeah.
You have, I really think that Trump played the Democrats with that. I really think he purposely elevated Biden to try and run against him, because Biden's going to get fucking crushed.
Oh, I could see it. I mean, Biden, what appeal does Biden even have?
Nostalgia.
Like, he just some senile old guy who talks about corn pop or whatever the guy's name is that he fought.
Yeah. Oh man, I was gonna wrap a chain around Corn Pop's head. His little kids like to touch my leg hair. Yeah, that's the next president. Oh man, so presidential, right?
What a great choice between him and Trump.
Right, but with that though, I believe personally that the strategy the libertarians should best employ is to try and win over the Bernie voters, and the best candidate I see to do that is Vermin Supreme.
I mean, I would get behind Berman if he's nominated. I'm kind of undecided on my exact candidate right now, but I would support him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the only one capable of getting those votes. You think, is Jacob Hornberger going to be able to get those votes?
Probably not.
Talking about, oh, let's pull the rug out from everyone with Social Security, and his platform is they'll be fine. Like,
as much as I do agree with Hornberger on a lot of things, I don't think he has much appeal in that regard.
And you know what's worse than that is Joe Jorgensen in a debate saying that COVID-19 isn't a big deal because only poor people will die from it.
She said that?
Yeah, in the Pennsylvania debate.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Yeah, it blew my fucking mind when I heard it. I thought I misheard her. I went over to my buddy Brian Ellison, who's been on the podcast before. For all the listeners, you can go back and listen to that. When was that? That was I'll have to pull. I'm pretty sure he's been on there. Hasn't he been? Yeah. Well, you remember him from Arm the Homeless. Everyone remembers him from Arm the Homeless. But the big thing is that I went to him and I was like, did I hear her right? Did she actually really just fucking say that? And he's like, yeah. I was like, holy fucking shit.
Oh my God. That's tone deaf. Like, yeah. Oh my God.
So talk about the stereotype that, right libertarians hate the poor.
Yeah. Like I get called right libertarian by some people. I get called left libertarian by others, but as probably a right libertarian, like I get the importance of stressing like the idea of like private safety nets or mutual aid or something like that, like something besides just the government. Like I'm still like in awe about that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if you want to know more about mutual aid, you got to read Kropotkin. Now I'm going to get you to read some commie shit. Kropotkin wrote a whole book on mutual aid you got to check out. You want to know how that shit works.
I mean, I think mutual aid, even in like in the kind of society I envision, could still work. Because I mean, I'm totally fine with like voluntary whatever being set up like once the state's abolished.
Mm-hmm. But here's the big thing is that we need to have these mechanisms supported. We can't have candidates that are running around saying, oh, everyone will be fine. Oh, the poor just die. Big whoop. Who cares? Nobody cares about the poor. Oh, fuck them. Their families will take care of them. They don't need their Social Security check, even though that's their entire income, and they have no savings because the fucking economy fucked them over. And they're going through, a fucking global fucking pandemic and recession, and they have no money in their stock portfolio. But the shit, they don't even have a stock portfolio. Like the was it the bottom 40% own like no stocks?
Yeah,
at all.
I believe that.
Yeah, the top 10% like own all the stocks.
Huh.
Yeah.
And I guess I learned something new today.
Yeah, it's the disproportionate nature in which various social classes, economic classes own the stocks is so when they talk about bailing out the stock market, that doesn't affect the people on the bottom. That doesn't do anything for them. That doesn't.
I mean, even from a right libertarian perspective, I mean, those people have still gotten stolen from and victimized by government in a multitude of ways over the years. I mean, I still think there's some argument for not just like hang them out to dry. No,
I mean, especially since they've been disproportionately the amount and not to mention just the way the system is set up. The way that we have a society where you're coerced into doing things you wouldn't do voluntarily in order to survive. We don't have any sort of choice in the matter. The reality of the situation is you have to work for a wage. If you don't, you can't pay your fucking taxes. If you don't, You can't buy a piece of property because all the property is fucking claimed. All the unowned property, all the real unclaimed property that you should be able to just go camp on, you should be able to just go claim and build a
Yeah.
house on, is all owned by the federal government. And, that artificially inflates the value. Plus you have the fucking criminal ass banks who are fucking inflating the monetary supply while keeping, houses purposely off the market in order to inflate that they illegally and immorally foreclosed on during the 2018 financial collapse. And the worst part about it is like a lot of the people during that time, like to go back to the 2008 financial collapse, I'll tell you a story about some of the shit that happened in Detroit. You had homes that families had owned for 60, 70 years. It was paid off, right? Free and clear. It was grandma's home, right? But their financial collapse happens. There's no money coming in, right? So what do? Is they raise the tax. That now we have all these taxes they got to pay on it, right? Can't afford the taxes. Got no job. So what do the government do? Government does. They come and seize the home, right?
Yeah.
Sell it to fucking investors. And now the investors want to rent it back to the people who owned it free and clear for 70 fucking years.
Wow. I did. Like, I know we have our disagreements about some things with wage labor and stuff like that, but I think we can both agree that's just straight up messed up.
It's fucking criminal.
Yeah. That's government. That's literally like government taking someone's home.
It is. And that kind of shit happens all the time. Government comes in and takes your home over unpaid taxes. So what do you got to do? You got to go work for a wage to pay your taxes. What if there is no jobs? Right now, there's not going to be any jobs. This coronavirus shit.
Oh my God! This is
we are at unemployment worse than the Great Depression. And you know what? Back during the Great Depression, people actually owned their homes.
It's a total mess right now.
You know what's going to happen with all these people that the bank is really rent to owning the bank from the bank right now? Everyone, we got 30-40% unemployment rate. Of people under 45, it's something like 55% unemployment rate of people under 45. It's crazy, and it keeps going up and up and up and up and up. So you're going to have a lot of people taking people's homes. You're going to have a lot of people doing the same kind of stuff. And, we don't have the backyard gardens that we used to have during the Great Depression. People don't own their homes free and clear, and they're only having to pay the property taxes like we did during the Great Depression. We don't have people that are able to, we don't have the land that you're able to go and build a log cabin on. We don't have that situation right now.
They're not even letting you buy seeds in certain places.
Right, they're not letting you buy seeds in Michigan. So if anyone can send me seeds, please send me seeds. Private message me on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Hit me up, email me, whatever. I'll give you my address. Send me seeds. I need I can't go buy seeds right now. They have the seeds shut down. Like I can't go buy seeds. I can't go buy anything. I can't grow my own food. And please send me seeds. Send seeds to Michigan. I need potatoes. I need corn. Hook me up. Send me some corn seeds and some potato seeds. I can live on potatoes. I can live on potatoes and corn. I just need the seeds. I do have places I can plant. So hook me up. Anyone listening, hook me up. If you can. But yeah, Michigan banned that. That's crazy. This whole thing is crazy, and we're fucked. We thought, you look at 2008, thought that was bad. Wait till we see the fuckery now. You think that shit that was going on in Detroit was fucked? Wait till you see what these fuckers got in store for us this time. When we have 30-40% unemployment rate, when we have people unable to work, because 20% of the people that recover from this can't even fucking walk at a brisk pace without getting out of breath, is what they found. Yeah,
this is like nothing I've ever seen.
Yeah, we have, there's 100 as of Monday, 116 cases in South Korea that were healed. They were done. They were recovered. They tested negative. They're recovered. They're sent on their way. Boom, reinfection. Do we know if they got reinfected or if it's something that lied dormant? We don't know yet. But
Yeah, I'm hoping it was false negatives, because
yeah,
if it can just reinfect you, we are like,
we are screwed.
yeah,
We are screwed. And in that situation, we need backyard gardens. We need community gardens. We need mutual aid, because if you have a situation like that, you're going to have shit supply chain. You're going to
yeah,
have everything's fucked. We need people to survive, and we don't have the kind of stuff we had during the Great Depression, when so many people during the Great Depression had backyard gardens. A lot of people were able to eat out of their gardens. We don't have that.
yeah.
So, but on a lighter note, how have you been spending your, quarantine? What have you been what's been on your agenda? Watched any good TV shows, play any good video games, or has it just been researching these alt-right fuckers?
It takes up a decent amount of my time, I gotta say. Well, I mean, when I'm in quarantine. But I ended up watching Tiger King.
Oh yeah.
And that was
That was
there's
wild.
another libertarian for you.
That was a wild show, I'll tell you.
I know. What else have I done? Like I said, I'm a law student, so I'm still doing some stuff with that. That's a total mess. But
Well, have you transferred to just online classes with that?
yeah, it's all online classes. Like, I'll be in the middle of a class on Zoom, and the teacher will freeze and stuff. Like, it's a total mess. I mean, they went mandatory pass fail for the semester, but still, it just like everything, it's a total mess.
Yeah. Everything's getting messed up with this. Everything's getting completely fucked.
Yeah, I'm losing my mind just staying in my apartment all day.
Right? Yeah, I ended up getting laid off from my job. So I've been just sitting at home playing video games. I put over 185 hours on Animal Crossing. So I've got a pretty sweet town going on in Animal Crossing. So that's what I've done with my time.
My Trump bucks came in today.
Oh yeah, did you already spend it? I already spent.
No,
mine.
I haven't spent mine yet.
Yeah, I already blew mine. I blew it all in one transaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I needed a fridge. I needed a new fridge, and I was like, well, shit, perfect timing. I got $1,200, so let's go ahead and buy a new fridge. So I ended up buying the new fridge. I didn't spend the whole $1,200, but
yeah, I mean, I feel like the government owes us more money than that anyway.
Yeah, the fucked up thing about that too is they give us $1,200, right? And then the corporations, what are the corporations getting? The corporations are getting up to $4 trillion.
Well, they always bail out their friends. That's how it works.
That's the truth. The worst part about it too is that the government was just completely fucked, and they lied to us about the severity of this, just to give themselves time to exit the stock market. And there's so many senators and shit that they've busted. That they were briefed on this shit, and then sold millions of dollars in their stock and exited the stock market and told the American everything's going to be fine, everything's fine, don't worry, we have it all under control. And then as soon as the stock market tanks, they're buying that shit back up pennies on the dollar.
But don't worry, Jared Kushner's going to save us.
Oh yeah, Jared fucking Kushner. He gets put in charge of it. What happened to Mike Pence? Mike Pence is the worst one to put in charge. You know that Mike Pence, during his time as governor in Indiana, Mike Pence was directly responsible for prolonging and making worse an AIDS pandemic.
I believe it.
Because there was a Planned Parenthood, and it was the only site they had for HIV testing in this county. Right? And of course, Mike Pence, what's he do? Shuts the shit down. Right? So now they have no sites to get HIV testing. So you get rid of testing. And then, all of a sudden, sometime later, now we have a whole bunch of HIV going on, and, people don't know about it. And now people find out about it. They trace it back. They figure it out. They trace it back to the fact that there was a problem with intravenous drug use spreading it, right? So Mike Pence says he morally objects to setting up a needle exchange, and allowed it to continue on for months before finally caving and doing, what needed to be done to try and lessen the extent of this epidemic, and he ended up setting up a needle exchange. But it went on for months. He dragged his feet along and morally objected to the proper treatment. Now, what happens if we find out that the best way to solve COVID-19 is to set up needle exchanges? Now, it probably isn't, but
we're all gonna have coronavirus, but at least it'll help us pray the gay away,
right? Like fucking Mike Pence. But then he puts Jared Kushner in charge, like the fucking nepotism of Trump.
Oh, I know.
And who the fuck is Jared Kushner? Like, what has he ever done?
I think Ivanka Trump is on the panel too.
Yeah, what has she ever done? Like, who are these people? They've done nothing. They're just fucking Trump's family, and they're put in charge of shit just because they're Trump's family. But that's, America first.
Well, I mean, when Trump got elected, I was kind of hoping he'd like at least the one silver lining would be he'd make a mockery of the presidency, and he's definitely done a good job of that. I mean, the guy has no idea what the fuck he's doing.
Do any of them ever?
No, but I mean, I just feel like he's a little special in that regard. He doesn't even hide it.
Oh, I can't wait for Biden to make a mockery of the president if he ends up pulling off a fucking win, which he probably won't.
He'll just be like, "Where am I?"
But that $1,200 is totally bullshit, too. It's total bullshit. It's all a fucking smokescreen. We're gonna end up having to pay that back. You know who's not gonna end up having to pay back their fucking bailouts? Fucking corporations,
banks, airlines, whatever.
Yeah, they're giving the corporations grants that they don't have to pay back and shit like that. They're gonna take that $1,200 back from us come tax time.
It's too big to fail all over again.
Yeah. We're not too big to fail though. We get a pitiful fucking, and we don't even get it. They're just like, here, you can have $1,200 for now. We're taking it back. It's fucking, and they're trying to make it seem like they're doing us a fucking favor.
The government is here to help us.
Yeah,
we all know that.
Yeah, and the fucking worst part about it though, is by the time people realize what happened, it'll be after the election. Like, that's going to help fucking Trump, because he's, especially with the people he's sending out checks, he's forcing them to put his name on the checks.
Oh, I know. I saw that, and it's delaying it.
Yeah. So, and he wants that, delaying it so it's right near the election too. Oh, here's $1,200 from Trump. And then after the election, oh, we're going to need that $1,200 back. But by then it's too late.
Yeah, it'll probably work.
It'll fucking work. It'll work like a fucking charm. And meanwhile, they bail out the corporations, give them all that fucking money. Failing corporations like Boeing.
Yeah.
Like, they were already fucking going under. They fucked up that 737 Max jet thing, and they were all fucked up off that. That was their big new jet, and it turns out to be a piece of fucking shit. So we already had this failing ass company. Oh, we got to save them. Coronavirus. It's fucked. The whole shit's all about corporate power, corporate interests, whatever's good for the corporation. Fuck the little guy. But at least I get my extra $600 on unemployment. Oh, fucking great. Well, Judd, where can people find more about you, what you're doing? Where can they follow, your exposing of these alt-right and tanky pieces of shit that are trying to come in and fuck shit up for both right and left libertarians?
So we're at facebook.com/fakertarians. We're also at twitter.com/fakertarians and fakertarians.com. I'm actually working on an article today. It's gonna be a little while, but refuting Dave Smith's immigration position. So keep an eye out for that.
All right. So that'll be published here probably next day or so.
Next few days, yeah. I'm doing a little bit of research. I'm incorporating a little bit of early Rothbard into it with confiscation and the homesteading principle.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite Rothbards. Even though he was a fucking spooky nerd in that shit, but he's like, well, it's got to be like 50% of the corporation that You know, it's got to be 50%. And then he like immediately backtracks on that. He's like, well, you know, in the case of like Dow Chemical, they're pretty fucked, so they get their means of production seized by the workers. You know, and it's like this whole fucking. Oh, he was such a spooky nerd.
Well, because Dave Smith was saying something to me about like he was using to justify borders. He was saying like, what about someone doing meth in a school or something like that?
Hey, what's wrong with doing meth in a school?
So I'm gonna
I used to sell weed in my school. The kids that are listening, you got to go to school. And the reason, so we got to get this coronavirus shit, because when you're selling weed in school, you get a better price. There's your economics 101 class for you today.
Supply and demand.
Supply and demand. You got the risk factor factored in. So a bag, you normally get, $20, $25 for. You're able to get $30, $35 for it. So there you go. Truancy is bad, kids. You gotta show up to sell dope. But yeah, thanks for coming on the show here. So Fakertarians is where they can find you.
Thanks for having me.
Put a link in the show notes. And everyone listening, all the stuff I'm supposed to say at the end of these podcasts. # please donate to the Patreon, all that bullshit. And nice spooks, nerd.